I've always wanted to do this, Albus.
How did you know about this place?
I did not bring us here, Albus.
She did.
Neither of you are part of our plan to begin with.
Your plans are the reason she's become more unstable. I no longer find the Muggles to be below us as you do.
We were meant to rule them.
You know nothing of protecting those you love. You know only of dominance.
Then we settle this now. Look at me, Albus!
Gentlemen, the time's come once again to discuss things.
Alright. Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Geeky Gentlemen. I am Sid Partu. Joining me today is the real Manos.
Hi.
And as a special guest today, we have the Curious Lo.
Hello, hello.
Hello. Lo is here because we're talking about Harry Potter again, and Lo's a big Potter fan, so I figured it'd be cool to have her on for this Harry Potter-based fan film called what, Lo?
The Greater Good.
The Greater Good.
The Greater Good.
Yes, the Greater Good, the infamous duel between Aberforth Dumbledore, Albus Dumbledore, and Garrick Grindelwald, that led to the death of Ariana Dumbledore. It's interesting because it's a pretty big moment, in the series, but it's, so small. I had to remind myself of, this feels so much more significant than it actually is because I went and read the chapter that this happens in, and it's not even a full chapter of the book. It's just Aberforth talking about it, and it's more of
not even a full couple paragraphs. He just kind of mentions it for the most part. I mean, specifically this scene.
A little bit. Yeah, okay, that's fair. Yeah.
Yeah. He talks about Dumbledore and Gellert a little bit, but more. But as far as this scene, he's just I confronted him, there was a duel, somehow Ariana was killed, and it's a little bit more than that, but it's not much.
Yeah, so it's interesting that someone decided to make a fan film out of this, because, this is one of those things that should probably have been fleshed out a little bit more in the book, or some other type of media, and it's kind of fascinating, and it's definitely a big character thing. Funny enough, neither of you were there for this, but when Rasco and I were doing the fan film reviews, Rasco and I talked about another Harry Potter fan film that this same channel did called Severus Snape versus the Marauders. And that was after this one. So this is a bit older of their work. But yeah, I mean, this fan film's been up for 4 years, and it's got 8.5 million views, so it's very, very successful little thing, and you can definitely tell that the fan base was kind of hungry for something like this that dealt with the history between Grindelwald and Dumbledore. So I don't know. I found it interesting. Probably most curious about what Manos thought, since he's probably the least of a Harry Potter fan out of the three of us in this call.
Well, I like film. I like the film series. I've only read 2 of the books, and you said this was a scene referenced and mentioned in one of the books?
Yeah,
in the very last book.
Which one?
Deathly Hallows.
Oh, okay.
The last one.
That's not the one I read. So
Okay.
I didn't have any experience with this. And I gotta say, I do. When I was watching this, it did feel like, is this part of a series? This doesn't feel too original. This feels like it was adapted, so that does explain that, because it did feel like it was the conclusion of something, conclusion of several series or a longer film.
Mm-hmm.
Because to me, as a more casual fan, I really didn't find this too interesting. This one I wasn't really too into.
Okay, and I think that's kind of fair to say, because this is very much meant to like kind of serve that purpose of the thing that's just kind of mentioned but not really gone into, and it's a pretty big deal. This is a pretty substantial thing, because this is what everything about if Lo, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is kind of what like Albus Dumbledore being gay is pretty much predicated on, is this scene, right?
I mean, like, just that whole thing of his history with Grindelwald is because of his relationship with this guy. So, like, so it's not just this scene, but it is all of that stuff that they talked about. There's stuff earlier in the 7th book where, at least it must be earlier, where like Harry's talking to various people and like reading the like expose
by Rita Skeeter.
Yeah, and there's all the stuff about how like, oh, like sensationalized, like he had a relationship, like a friendship with Grindelwald, like da da da, like isn't that crazy? Because Grindelwald's essentially like Wizard Hitler, like you know, like that's awful. Like, shouldn't this be so shocking? So like we do get more of it in that sense, but this is certainly the culmination of that relationship. Okay. Well, it's like the first culmination of that part of their relationship, because then there's obviously the second part where he ends up defeating him when they're older.
Yeah. So I mean, it's really interesting, and I can totally see if you're like not into the I guess the peripheral of the history of the Harry Potter universe, because I mean, obviously it's kind of weird to call this a Harry Potter fan film, but I mean, that's just, you know, marketing for you.
Well, it is easier to reference.
Yeah, it's an Albus Dumbledore fan film before it's anything else, honestly.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but it was definitely interesting to see. I will say, while I did enjoy a lot about this, I did think that this was a bit weaker than the other fan film that I've seen from these guys. And that's not saying too much, because the other one's still pretty damn good. Oddly enough, this suffers from one of the same problems, though to a lesser extent, with the visual effects integration. But I do think that one of the things that makes this weaker is this is an Albus Dumbledore fan film before it's anything else, and personal opinion here, the actor playing Albus Dumbledore is probably the weakest actor in the bunch. I don't know if I'm the only one that
really
felt that way.
See, I would have, if I actually was more distracted. I don't want to say that any of these gentlemen are awful actors. Obviously, they're all part of like a YouTube channel. These aren't like A-list actors. At least I assume that they're all part of the channel. I haven't actually done any like research into that. But the guy who played Grindelwald, he really distracted me with his accent. And like, I don't know, maybe he is British and I'm just dumb, but like it really, really was distracting to me.
Okay. I don't know, to me that, like, I didn't catch the accent as a problem for Grindelwald. I don't know, there's a lot of trouble just with the lack of emotion or really weird way in which things were emoting from the actor playing Dumbledore. Albus Dumbledore, I should say. If it were me, I would have switched the casting around and had the guy playing Aberforth play Albus, because he was able to convey a lot more emotion. I don't know. Maybe the actor made a decision to try to play Albus as more down to earth and stoic, but I don't know. Something about it just did not fit.
I think this definitely gave Aberforth more to do, though, because like Albus is still at this point like unsure of like how this is gonna go. You know, this is a man that he's in love with, that he's sort of been blinded to the fact that he's doing all of these like evil things, and like obviously when it comes to his family, he's gonna step up and protect them, as we see in this. But I can see why Aberforth would be the one. I just think that he got more not epic, but like more like angry things to say, because he was like shouting at Albus to like to stop and we need to go and like all this stuff. And he was the one that was comforting Ariana, and so you get all of that stuff, and it's really just, I keep wanting to say Dumbledore, but there's 3 Dumbledores in this scene. Alvis is, I think, kind of caught in this sort of like unsure middle, so he's not really getting upset at his brother, but he's not really getting upset at Grindelwald. And then he does eventually get a little bit more to that place. But I don't know, I actually really liked Dumbledore in this.
You know, like, for me, it's not so much it's a little bit throughout, but for me, the thing that really did it is the end. When his sister's dead, and he spends more, like, maybe it's a little bit of choice of the acting, part of it's maybe choice of direction. I feel it's just a mistake that he turns and looks at Grindelwald once his sister's dead. I don't know what it is. Like, I get the idea that he was in love with this guy and he feels guilty because either he killed him or either he killed his sister or his actions with this boy that he fell in love with has led to the death of his sister. Either way, he's responsible. Like, I get, like, that's all there in character context, but, like, I don't know, just, she just literally seconds ago died, and it feels selfish, it feels awkward, it feels very out of character for him to focus on literally anyone else but her in that moment.
I always thought that Dumbledore was an extremely selfish character.
Maybe, I don't know, like, I feel like he's a selfish person who's very aware of that and goes out of his way to try to not be.
Well, but we're seeing a Dumbledore that's over 100 years old most of the time. So,
yeah, you're right.
So there's a lot of character development in there that maybe we're going to see in Fantastic Beasts 2 out this December, not sponsored. So maybe they will see some of that, even though they don't intend to touch on any of the gayness, which I would have loved, but stupid Hollywood.
I don't know, Manos, what do you think? What did you think about the performances here?
I thought they were all kind of equal to each other, and that they were okay. There were no real standouts, but there were, and I mean that in a one way or the other. There were no standouts to me that were bad or great.
Okay.
I thought they were all kind of equal. They all struck me as, I don't know, a bunch of admirals from the First Order yelling at each other. And so the performances didn't really, strike me as odd. Okay. And I didn't really think about the turning and looking at the other guy,
Grindelwald,
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. To me, that really did feel just, I don't know. I can't imagine how anyone could focus on anything else but the person that they maybe just killed. At that point, that was the weird thing to me. And then I don't know, the way it's written, maybe Lo's onto something. Maybe she's given it more credit than I am, and maybe it deserves it. Of, like, especially with that question, did you see which curse hit her? It's like in Aberforth says it doesn't matter. Yeah, that is like a selfish thing, and so he's maybe trying to unload some of that guilt. I don't know. I could see it. Maybe I need to give this another rewatch to see if it works a little bit better for me.
Mm-hmm. Yes, you do.
Yes,
do it right now. We're gonna wait.
We will wait. Appreciate it. Anyway, no. So I don't know. That certainly came to mind for me. Now, Lo, one of the reasons I wanted you on here is because we just did the video talking about Albus Dumbledore as a character, and I mentioned this. So, what did you think of young Dumbledore as portrayed here?
I mean, I kind of already touched on it a little bit as far as the acting goes. I think that, honestly, as a whole, it's obvious to me that this fan film was less about the character and more about, not to like rag on them or anything, but more about showcasing their skill as editors and like special effects artists and all that sort of stuff. Not a bad thing in any way. I feel like this was more geared towards that. I mean, at least 50%, probably more of this was just the fight scene, which doesn't leave a ton of room for emoting and acting. It's a lot of diving out of camera and cool special effects. So I mean, kind of like what Mano said, I think they were fine. Not bad, not amazing, just, good job. They were given like 5 to 10 lines of dialogue each, so it wasn't like a huge thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. For me, I got a lot of emotion out of just the context of the scene itself, I guess, and maybe it's just because I'm really interested in that side of things, and it's cool to get that explored. But I don't know. I thought the choice to you could showcase a wizard duel any way you want. I thought the choice of where and how to set this was pretty good, and I don't know. I kind of identified and felt a lot of the emotion that the characters were supposed to be going through. It felt reasonably intense to me in that regard. That side of it worked for me. The debate, the greater good, all that stuff kind of came to a head and worked out really well for me. And then the fight scene just like kind of heightened the emotion. So I thought it worked out personally.
I'm not saying it didn't work. I just think that that was definitely the focus, in my opinion. Like, from my point of view, it was more of a focus on that fight scene and less on the acting. So I guess I just didn't care that much if the acting wasn't like amazing. I don't know. But that's me. Obviously, we disagree.
It does seem like to me that the main focus of doing this was to just basically connect the dots, I guess. Like, hey, the story there's kind of a lot of blanks in here. Let's just kind of do that scene. And that's kind of it. Which, I don't know. I do appreciate it better now that I know that. But as someone who didn't know about that scene, because I don't believe it's mentioned in the film, and I didn't read the book, so I'm not familiar with the discussion.
It's mentioned just about as much as it is in the book in the movie. It's just like you see the portrait, and Aberforth is like, she's dead. It was a thing. like that's about it, which is honestly not much more than there is in the book. It's such a like throwaway little I mean, not throwaway because it's important, but it's another like straw or like on the camel's back, like to show you Dumbledore's true character, because most of the 7th book is so much about like Dumbledore is the Dumbledore that you knew, but he had this whole other side to himself, this whole other backstory that is honestly kind of dark. And this scene that we just watched is just another example of that sort of dark past, that he may or may not have actually killed his sister, and he definitely indirectly killed his sister by getting involved and letting it escalate with Grindelwald. So there's all of that there, but it's just one thing of many that we find out about Dumbledore in that book and movie. So it's important, but there's so much other stuff that they talk about.
Okay, let me ask you this, because I thought this was an interesting choice to deviate from the book. Because in the book they mentioned that Aberforth was involved in the fight up until the end as well, and they were all throwing curses left or right. And so none of them knew whose curse killed her, whether it was Grindelwald, Albus, or Aberforth. Now, in the fan film, though, they clearly remove him from the equation of the blow that kills Ariana. How'd you feel about that?
I mean, it's a choice to have it be a little bit more like one of the two of them. It certainly does seem in the book like it's supposed to be more of like the three of them are standing in 3 different corners, like firing curses, and like nobody really knows like even when she died. Like I always when I would imagine this sequence, like the dust had cleared and they were like, oh shit, she's dead, like she's lying on the ground, go shake her, are you okay, like when did this happen, we weren't even paying attention, type of a thing. But in this, it also is kind of like she caused it. And I think, I mean, I haven't read the book in a while, but my brain is kind of... I went and reread this chapter. She does get involved, and her magic, she does also get involved in the fight. Okay. So that is translated into this fan film. But they don't specifically, I don't think, again, you're the one that has read it more recently, they don't specifically say, like, she got involved and that's when she got hit.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Especially because she's an obscurial, which is only something that they've talked about in the newest movie.
Fantastic Beasts.
Yeah, that one. I mean, we assume she's an obscurial. Nobody's ever like confirmed it because we didn't like have a name for it. But like, she's a person with repressed magic, so it comes out in violent bursts. So like, it's not. I mean, again, there's so little text to really delve into with it that it's hard to really tell what happened. But in my mind, I always saw it as kind of like she's getting so upset that like her brothers are fighting with this guy and one of them's going to die, somebody's going to die, and it just bursts out of her type of a thing because that was how her magic worked because she had repressed it for so long and it was like a depression sort of thing almost. That it was interesting in this that she then was like, it did burst out of her, but it was like purposeful. Like she stepped up and she was like, all right, here I go. I'm going to scream and shoot magic at you. And then that is the precise moment when I get hit because I stepped in. So it kind of takes some of the blame off of whoever did it, of the three boys, because she also got involved. Like she made a decision to stand up and walk out there.
Yeah, but like they very clearly in this, and I think the implication was in the text originally too. They clearly show that not only is she like magically repressed, but she's got some kind of mental disorder to go along with it because of the repression. Like in this, showing that she's like, when am I going to get to see mom again? And like the implications very clearly that her mom's dead and she just doesn't understand it. I think that kind of works in the favor of, it's still very much their fault. She's just doing, what someone like who's emotionally distraught but doesn't really have the tools to know what to do about the situation would do, which is just scream for it to stop, and then it like bursts out at that moment. But again, I don't know. I thought it was interesting to really square the blame against, it's either Dumbledore or it's Grindelwald, and if it's Grindelwald, it's still Dumbledore's fault. And Albus, goddammit. I thought that was an interesting choice to make on the part of the fan film to square it, no matter what, even like by completely removing Aberforth, it is now entirely Albus's fault, no matter whether it was his curse that hit her directly or not. I thought that was a really, really interesting choice because, especially with the way that this fan film presents it, and as it's said in the book, Aberforth starts the fight with Grindelwald, so he's then on some level partially to blame, even though Albus brought him into their lives. You still started the fight. At the end of the day, the dude's kind of defending himself. So I don't know. I thought it was an interesting choice to make it just put it squarely on Albus's shoulders by removing Aberforth. It changes the dynamic quite a bit. Okay, throw that out there. Let's go ahead and move on to the visuals, because again, like I said, I'd done a review of their other fan film, Severus Snape and the Marauders, and I talked quite a bit in that one about how a lot of the visual effects integration, it's good, but it's not great. There was a lot of flatness to it, and I think that carries over a lot here. Oddly enough, it gets to be less of a problem the longer it goes on, but at the very beginning, I thought it was the most noticeable and the most awkward. Like, particularly the first time that Albus throws Grindelwald out into the ocean. That was like a really, really awkwardly composited effect, I thought. What did you guys think of the effects in here, though? We'll start with Manos, since he's been quiet.
Yeah, the effects I thought were fine. Obviously, they're on a shoestring budget, but and you could see that the things they were hitting weren't really disrupting the actual location that they were in. So I don't know. I'd say they were pretty moderate. They did a lot of the close-up fighting with the wands, and which they focused on quite a bit, with a couple of like ooh-ah shots of this guy being thrown across the whole beach with I think that was Dumbledore who almost like smashed against the rock. I thought it was mostly okay. Obviously not a large budget, but for what they had, I thought it looked fine enough.
Yeah. Lo?
I agree. I think it looked fine. I wasn't distracted by it or anything. And I mean, it makes sense that of the three of us, and you would be the one to be a little bit more into that, just because I think you've worked on some like 3D animating and like all that sort of stuff. So you're more into that and more aware of what goes into it than at least I am. I don't know about Manos, but so
I don't know. I don't know shit about that stuff.
Yeah, I don't know.
I know what looks good. I know what looks bad. How you get there, I don't know.
See, but I feel like I know what looks good and I know what looks bad, but the stuff in the middle, I kind of am like, it either looks good or it looks awful, So it probably is more like, if it looks okay, I think it looks great, because I just don't really know what I'm looking for. And because I'm not an animator, I'm not a special effects artist, I'm not like so interested in it that I'm like, ooh, like, I can see, like, I'm a dancer, so when I see dancing on screen, I'm always like really analyzing like what moves they're doing and like how they've choreographed it. Like I can see how somebody who's into special effects would be like, all right, like where's the seam of like where this shot is spliced together, and like, oh look, the stuff isn't getting disturbed. So like for me, it didn't take me out of it at all. What did take me out a little bit was how far these guys were getting thrown, and maybe it's just because I'm just so used to the movies and the way dueling and magic is presented in the movies, which is certainly different from the books. In the movies, it's literally just throwing colored beams of light at each other, and that's it, like 90% of the time. In the books, it's a lot more varied. So like, I get how maybe that's more what they were going for, was like doing all these things, but like both the times that they got thrown out like over the ocean, and I think the very first thing, I don't even remember who struck the first blow, but like the very first thing was somebody getting shot like straight up in the air, and I was like, damn, like he's going way up there.
Yeah. No, I mean that's definitely in the, like, I remember particularly Order of the Phoenix. There's the shot, just because I've watched that most recently. There's a shot where the Death Eater gets like sent just flying through the Hall of Prophecy for like miles. And so they're it's not without precedent, but I do agree it begins to look a little silly. I think my biggest problem with this is a lot of their and I'll get technical here for just a second. I feel a lot of their compositing is really flat. The shot that looked, I think, the worst to me was Grindelwald being blown out over the ocean, because he's just so flat in front of camera, and I feel like the reason they did that is because it's easier to composite someone who's on the same plane as the camera. So if put your hand in front of your eyes, your hand is on the same plane as your eyes. Angle your hand 45 degrees, it's not on the same plane anymore. So like when you composite someone flying back on the same plane as the camera, it's a lot easier to do. It's a lot easier to animate and stuff and not have it look super weird, but it also looks a lot flatter and just it doesn't look as good. It loses depth, whereas if they're just at a slight angle and they're flying off, it gives a better sense of depth of field. So like that kind of came to mind, and then there was like some of the poor use of composited elements mixed with CGI in the kind of like flame tunnel thing that Grindelwald shot at Albus. I thought that looked like it looked like they had 2 or 3 different kind of fire effects they were kind of trying to throw together, and I thought like each of them looked bad in completely different ways. So that was unfortunate. As the fight went on, though, and they started to do just the little light wavy things, that it looked a lot better. What's funnier about it is it looks better than what they, in my opinion, than what they did a couple years down the road in the Severus Snape vs. the Marauders, because that at a certain point just kind of becomes Marauders throwing light beams at Snape left and right and him blocking them, and those looked really flat. Here it didn't look flat. Like, he catches them and throws them, and there's this sense of dimension of it doesn't just go left or right or up or down. It kind of goes behind and at an angle, and it just looks a lot better. It adds a sense of depth to the screen. I feel like I saw the effects get better throughout this fan film, which was kind of interesting. Also, on a technical side, they're overall, I'd say they're decent at visual effects. The thing they're really good at is sound design. The sounds of the magical effects, the entire fan film, because they shot it on a beach, they were getting nothing but wind. This is all ADR, folks. That's great. That is fantastic ADR use.
That didn't even cross my mind. Again, not a sound designer. I don't even like think about that sort of stuff, even though I am aware of ADR. I just, wow. Yeah, you're right. Like, it would just be nothing but like waves crashing and wind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so they shot.
And I've seen cheap film shot on the beach, and it's bad.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
No, I mean, so this, like, the sound design stuff's really good, and I feel like this is a pretty good time to mention it. I'm really excited that the thing I think they're best at on the technical side of stuff is sound design, because they're working on another project, which is the Wizarding War, and it's gonna just be an audio drama. And I'm like, okay,
nice.
That sounds really cool. I'm excited for that project. So yeah, there's just some general thoughts on the technical side of things, and that's not to mention like the color grading and stuff. That's more subtle effects, and they did that really well too. But as far as the big flashy visual effects, overall decent. Some of the light beamy stuff I think looks a lot better than some of the more outstanding spells. And the thing is, as someone who likes wizard duels, I really like the more outlandish spells that I do the light beamy stuff. You had that point at which Albus and Grindelwald are doing a goddamn beam struggle, and I guess Albus just went like Kaioken times 20 and was able to throw it back at him or whatever. But I don't know, like that kind of stuff just nowhere near as interesting to me. Maybe I've just seen too much Dragon Ball Z with light flashiness, and I want more just turn this man into a newt. So like those kind of spells I liked. Like I like that Albus at one point gets a little S&M-y with his boyfriend and ties him up. That was pretty cute.
And they did Petrificus Totalis, which is like just classic Harry Potter, where he made, I think it was Aberforth, he made him like stiffen up and fall down. And I thought I feel like they did a small effect on that, like they made his body go like
just a little blue real quick. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I noticed that in a good way. I was like, ooh.
Mm-hmm.
That looks good.
Yeah, I think that was... if I had to guess, I'd guess that's maybe just a little bit of color grading just kind of masked around Aberforth's actor.
Yeah.
But that's seriously just shot in the dark. But yeah, I mean, that looked really good. They did a pretty good job on a lot of the subtleties, I think. All right. Well, what else there to talk about with this one? Music? Did you guys like the score?
Yes, actually, when you started mentioning the sound, I was going to be like, oh, and the music was really good too. So, that's all I have to say about the music. It was good.
The Curious Low, professional reviewer. Oh, man. Manos, since you were kind of like the I don't know, I feel like the range here is kind of like everyone's kind of somewhere in the middle in different sections of this, but I feel like Manos is maybe more on the negative end since he's got just the least exposure to this. And I didn't even think about this being like kind of a big continuity thing. I thought it was just kind of relatively common knowledge, but I don't know, where are you kind of landing on this as we move into ratings and wrapping up?
Well, it's nice to hear that it is kind of wrapping up and connecting the dots on some continuity, because it really does come across that way now that I think about it, because it really did let me cold. And I was watching thinking, like, have they done more of these? Should we have watched, like, the first one? Am I watching the last one? So yeah, with that said, it did, as just a casual Harry Potter fan watching it, I'm like, this is okay. It's a bunch of guys shooting each other and a girl dies. It's pretty much anything I've ever seen ever. So, yeah, it kind of did leave me a little bit flat.
Okay. Well, why don't we go ahead and go into ratings? So why don't you start us off, Manos?
Yeah, well, I pretty much explained my feelings right there. I would have to say I do respect the fact that they tried to tie up some old continuity and kind of like show us a piece of the history that was only briefly mentioned. I think the acting is decent enough. The effects are, I thought, were pretty good. It's just as someone who wasn't connected to the story, I wasn't connected to the story. It just kind of came off kind of generic. So I'm going to give it 3 skipping across the water wizards.
All right. How about you, Lo?
I feel mostly the same as Manos, just that I get the context a little more than he does. I think it was very decent, like all across the board. I think everything was really good. The stuff that really stood out to me was like the location was gorgeous. I thought the acting was pretty good. But yeah, I mean, it's a fan film. It's a snapshot of this like one little moment, so it's not going to be this whole story. I'm going to say 3. I don't want to give it a 4. I don't feel like it was quite a 4. I'm going to give it 3.5 secret gay crushes on your best friend out of 5.
Yeah. Oh, that's one thing I didn't mention. I really like the scene where Albus is like, "You know love." And he's like, "No, I don't." I was like, "Oh!"
Twist the knife.
yeah, that was pretty good.
What is love?
Baby, don't curse me.
Baby,
don't curse me.
No more.
Oh my. All right. Yeah, I'm kind of in the same place as you, Lo. Like there's a lot I quite like about this. There's a few things that I feel are just just not quite what I think they want it to be. I feel like if they kind of went back and looked at this, they go, yeah, that we're growing and learning, but that doesn't really hold up. I wish we did that in a different way visually, and I don't know, some of the acting still didn't work for me. So yeah, I'm gonna go with the 3.5 out of 5 gay wizards. I think that's a pretty good place to leave it. Though I do have one lingering question for both of you, but more Lo in particular. So I mentioned Severus Snape vs. the Marauders. Does watching this make you want to watch another fan film by these people?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Oh,
sure.
yeah. I mean, like, I know I only gave it a 3.5, but that's still, like, a positive rating to me.
No, it's totally. It's cool. I was just curious.
I appreciate their work, so yeah, I'd be open to see more of their stuff.
Okay, cool. And I mean, since they're like, it's weird that you can have a channel that just does fan films, and they've like got some other stuff for like their own independent feature length stuff. But yeah, they got like working on 3 different Harry Potter projects at this point. They got a Batman, like I think 2 Batman fan films or something like that. But everyone's got like 3 of those on their channel.
Hey, did you know that Star Wars fan films were a thing?
Yeah, right.
I just discovered that looking for a fan film for next week.
Yeah. All right, so I don't know, just if you did like this and you want to see more from these people, they do have some other fan film properties and just normal properties you can check out, so worth your time there. I do quite like Severus Snape vs. the Marauders. I think that it does everything that this does generally better, except for the visual effects, oddly enough. All right, so Manos, what are we going to be talking about next time?
Yeah, I want to talk about Laura, X-23 fan film.
Oh, cool. All right, sounds good. Been in a little bit of an X-Men kick lately, so that really works for me.
Oh, how fortunate. Great.
Nice. All right. Everyone, thanks very much for watching. Until next time, I'm the Philosopher.
I'm the realist.
And I'm the token lady.
And we are your Geeky Gentleman and Token Lady. And we will be discussing things.